It was so good. That was a 5 stars, baby. That was a 5 stars. How will my father ever agree with that? Review, It's a banger, man. But the twist got me. What can I say? Okay, delusional, but all right. I didn't really like any of them, to be honest. I was disappointed by this. It just shows you that people suck. What the hell is gonna happen next? Hello everybody. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Casual. For those who are new here, we are so glad to have you today. We are back with another monthly / bi-monthly wrap-up. I didn't do one of these in December because the holidays got away from me, but I'm here with so many books to tell you about. Granted, some of these were about 2 months ago, so I'm gonna do my best to keep it brief because there are quite a few. I'll put how many in the title because I haven't actually counted. So some of them I have in physical form, very few actually. The rest were library books or books on my Kindle. To start off December, we read Dead 11 by Jimmy Giuliano, and that book was, in my opinion, too long. If it was shorter, it probably would have been rated higher. Granted, I still rated it pretty highly because the concept and the like, is it paranormal, is it not aspect was insane. The lengths that these people went to protect themselves is just unheard of in the book world of books that I've read. I gave it a 4 stars. This island is stuck in 1994. Fashion, the shows, the cars, the jobs, it's all stuck in 1994. Some people that were still there when something happened in 1994 have to do that same thing every single day, like watching the O.J. Simpson chase on the TV, which is on the back of the book. It was just crazy. It was very inventive. The writing style was very easy to read. However, I think it just drug on a little too long. So that's why it only got a 4. Next, we read The Good Sister by Sally Hepworth. This book, I had to call my husband and talk about it because this was insane. I have never read a book that made me go, what? Huh? As many times as that book had. It was so good. 2 sisters, Fern and Rose. Rose cannot have a baby. Fern is autistic coded, ? They never really say. They say that she's more than a diagnosis. She decides to have a baby for Rose so Rose can have it. And then it just like spirals from there. That was a 5 stars, baby. That was a 5 stars. It was relatively short. It didn't drag on. It told me the story and nothing else. Nothing extraneous. No random side quests that don't mean anything, that don't go anywhere. Like, it was very much, here's the information. Isn't it crazy? You had a good time. That's all you need. Next, we had Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. I gave that one a 4 stars. Granted, I knew in advance that it was more romance heavy than it was action heavy. So it's not a story about vampires in the sense of like a Twilight. It's, the vampires are like symbolic of, you know, oppression and something that's coming to get you and coming to take over, and you know, they're a tool of the enemy in this case. So there are vampires. They're just not the main thing. It's mostly like a character study about her growing to love someone who's technically lower class than she is. It's a historical fiction, so it's like, how will my father ever agree with that? And what will I do if he disowns me? Growing through and past the expectations that are put on you based off of either your name or your title. So knowing all of that in advance, I gave it a 4 star. If I hadn't known all that stuff in advance, I don't think that it would have gotten 4 stars. I think I would have been disappointed. Next up, we read A Twisted Love Story by Samantha Downing. If you've ever read a Samantha Downing book before, you'll know how chronically readable it is. People make the worst decisions. It's like every B-rated horror movie that you've ever seen. It's just so, at parts infuriating, and at other parts so entertaining. Trash reality TV. However, this book was to a different level of infuriating. The relationship dynamic was toxic, right? It's literally in the title, Twisted Love Story. I thought they were going out and killing people. They were not. They were doing other crimes and keeping them under wraps and gaslighting everyone around them and not listening to advice and literally just like, this is what I should do. Skirts immediately and does the opposite thing. I gave this a 3.5 just because I couldn't turn off my logical brain. I just couldn't. But it was so entertaining. That's what gave it the score that it did, and that it wasn't lower than that. Definitely not a literary masterpiece, but a relatively fun time. Next we had Leave the World Behind. This book made it to my list of worst books of 2023. I've heard that the Netflix movie is similar in the style of it's abrupt, it's boring, and it doesn't give you any context for anything. It just drops you in the middle of a story, no reason to care about anyone. It's written in like a very clinical, like third person omniscient view that just doesn't do it for me, and it's short, but too short in the sense of like you never really have anything develop at all. Just 2.5 stars. Review. Not meh, that's 3 stars and above, but like, no, don't do it. Next, we have a 5-star that I actually forgot in my 5-star review, and I'm so sorry. My best and worst video, I forgot this one. It's Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang, and I just want to say that I haven't had as good a time with a romance, I think, ever. It had a very similar vibe to like a chick lit, like a romance, but more. But it didn't have as much going on. It was just like, this woman is very autistic coded again, and she hires a male escort to teach her how to date. And like, cause she's in her 30s, her mother, you know, I want grandkids, you're 30 years old, now's the time. And she's like, I've never dated, I don't know how to do this. I think I could, but I don't know how. So she hires someone to teach her. Granted, he's like, of course, the hottest person on the face of the planet, and then she starts to fall for him, and then he wants to protect her, and it's just a whole, it's just so good. I haven't had these same feelings since I read Beach Read by Emily Henry, so chef's kiss. I will be looking for this used so I can have it as a trophy, and I'm definitely going to be looking out for more Helen Huang in the future, and I really hope that this was not just a one-off from her. Next, we had What Lies in the Woods. It wasn't as Leave the World Behind, but it was a meh. 3 stars. I really hope that this is not indicative of Kate Alice Marshall and I's like jive as reader writer. It just wasn't for me. We'll leave it at that. Girl is a victim of a crime, almost dies when she's like 11, and her 2 little girl best friends were there and they saw what happened. And then the man who went to prison for it, he claims that he never did it. What are they hiding? It's the whole thing is like, what lies in the woods? It's like, well, what secrets lie in the woods? And then who is lying in the woods? Like, who is telling the lies in the woods? Which is very obvious from the beginning. Next, I have in a winter vlog, so I won't be going super into depth on those, but I read Christmas Presents by Lisa Unger, and I gave that a 4 stars. It was a little short. It struggled because I read it so soon after What Lies in the Woods because the crimes are very similar. So it probably wouldn't have struggled as far. I also read 5 Total Strangers by Natalie Richards. I actually went out and I have another Natalie Richards I found at a library sale that I'm hoping will give me the same vibes. It's the first YA thriller I'd ever read, and it was pretty good. You know, you didn't have to think too hard. It was just very surface level, on the nose. It was what I needed after the fire of What Lies in the Woods, so that was helpful. 4.5. Moving on, we have The Lost Village by Camilla Sten, which did make my best of the list. 5 stars. Creepy, isolated, I want to say Swedish village in the middle of nowhere. Used to be a commune. Everybody disappeared. Nobody knows where they went. The only person left was a baby, and the police found it just in an empty room. No one else, everyone else is gone. Baby grew up, had children of her own. Her granddaughter is the one that's heading this documentary series to try to figure out where all these people went. Potentially find them or figure out if it was like a Jonestown situation or if everybody just left. Why was this baby left alone? We have some letters that kind of shine some light on some crazy stuff that was going on. So how much of it is true? It was so good. I think I described it as Grave Encounters meets Midnight Mass, and can 100% recommend it. It might not be for you if you don't like a slow kind of found footage horror movie. You probably won't like this book, but if you do, it's a banger, man. I love it so much. Next, we got into the Christmas spirit. We read All I Want for Christmas is a Cowboy by Jessica Clare. This was aggressively mediocre. I am so sorry. It has the amnesia trope. She is the assistant for like this uber popular model. So she, you know, big city girl, fast life. She's being harassed by the model's boyfriend, unfortunately. So she decides to take a Christmas vacation to this cabin that she used to go to as a child and kind of get away from it all. Get away from him, get away from her job, be done. Her car wrecks in the blizzard and he saves her, and she wakes up, doesn't remember anything. So she's like having to find out who she is. She makes some wrong assumptions about herself, about him. He's also at the ranch alone because everybody else is home with their families for Christmas. So it's just the two of them. He's like healing her back to health, teaching her the hallmark value of a hard day's work type thing. And it's a 3.5. It's cute, it did the job, but it wasn't anything crazy. If you've seen a romance, if you've seen a Hallmark movie, you've seen this book. You know, it just unfortunately is the way it is. Next, I read on my Kindle The Christmas Party by Michaela Davids. You learn there was a murder at the very beginning of the book, and then the rest of the book is like, it could have been anybody. Any of these people, any of these siblings, any of their spouses. Was it the mom? Was it this random police officer? Who knows? They were too into their own drama, and it didn't focus enough on the crime. It focused it like way in advance of what happened to them, and then the crime was like an afterthought, which was kind of a weird thing. There are more books in the series. I don't think I'll be continuing it, but maybe that kind of focuses more on it. 3.5. Next, I read another Christina Lauren, which I actually really liked. It's called In a Holidays. Cute. She gets stuck in a loop on Christmas Day to try to figure out like what makes her happy. She gets in a car wreck and she wakes up on the plane going to the trip like 6 days earlier or something along those lines. And she has to kind of find what makes her happy. Childhood friends to lovers. Cuteness. Christmas. And lastly, in December, we had The Waterkeeper by Charles Martin. That was a 4 stars. It did get a little bit long. It was very action movie-esque. It was about a former priest turned like government operative who goes in and rescues women in human trafficking situations. And so he was focused on this one girl named Angel and like always trying to, you know, help those around him, but also save her. But also he has a, you know, a scarred past and, you know, stuff like that. And it had very religious overtones, so keep that in mind if that's not what you're into. But I thought it added to the story, to be honest. Have you ever seen the movie Sound of Freedom? Very similar vibe. And then we will move on to January. So not quite as many in January. We started out the year, first book of the year, with 5 Survive by Holly Jackson. I have never read a Holly Jackson before. As you've seen in my February TBR video, I have her A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series on my TBR. However, I've never read anything else by her, so I don't have anything to compare it to. I gave it a 4 stars. I thought it was pretty good. I've heard people be very harsh about it. I mean, it's a YA thriller. What do you want from it? Yeah, I want, with a thriller, I want to have a good time, and I want to know what's not, I don't want to know what's going on. That I got that in this book. It was very YA, as in like, it was very high school, some of the like decisions that they made and some of the alliances versus opposition of these 6 people that were trapped in this camper van with a sniper saying that he wants their secret. Like, somebody has a secret and I want it, and I'll shoot whoever, you know, doesn't give it to me if you try to leave this camper van. So it was like locked room, isolated town, no cell service. You know, we have to figure this out together. We have to try to outsmart him, or we just have to give him what he wants, that type of thing. I didn't think too hard about it. Gave it 4 stars. Had a pretty good time. I haven't been doing as many point whatevers this year. I have a couple 0.5s, but I don't know that I'm gonna get into like the 0.25, 0.75 category this year. It's just a bit too splitting hairs for me. Next we had Devil House, a big old 2 stars. I have a vlog coming out with this and the next 2 books, so I'm not gonna talk too much about it. It's about a house where there was a series of murders, and there's a true crime author that's gonna move in and try to write a book about it. That's what I'll give you. It's 2 stars. So if you want to hear me rant and rave, watch that video. Next, I needed a cleanser. So we went Winter Longing by Trisha Mills. YA romance. I think it's the first YA romance I've probably ever read. This girl starts to date her childhood best friend Spencer, and he dies. And then her person that lives next door, Jessie, has to try to like comfort her and be her friend. That's all in the back. And so she's just kind of grappling with loss of what she thought her life was going to look like versus what it looks like now. And should she be moving on when you're 17 and everybody's going off to college and everything is changing, and then all of a sudden your boyfriend dies? Like, I couldn't imagine the changes that you go through, and the guilt of survivor's guilt and all of this. Pretty good. Give it 4 stars. I liked it. We also had The Only One Left by Riley Sager. I'm officially caught up on Riley Sager. His books are not literary masterpieces, okay? I know that. I know that they're all written about women from a very man's perspective. I know that it's basically a competition to see how many twists he can throw in. This book took that to the extreme. It was a bit ridiculous, but in like the best way. Very campy. Like, this gave me Grady Hendrix horror vibes more so than like a Stephen King vibes. Like, it was very campy horror, on the nose, knows what it's about, to me anyway. Maybe I was giving it too much credit, but I gave it a 4.5 because I had a great time. I blew through this book so fast, which was so nice after having the meh start to the year. 4.5. Next, I read The Ever Divisive, The Last Word by Taylor Adams. I've never read a Taylor Adams before. Maybe I started with the wrong one or the right one, depending on how you look at it. I gave it 4 stars. It was fine. Like, I thought it was pretty good. The twists got me. Like, I didn't see them coming, to be honest. I knew one of them. I was like, this doesn't seem the full story, and it wasn't. But I was pretty proud of that. And, you know, it's very meta for us as those who like review books online, of like, a 1-star review gets this girl a stalker, basically. And the author comes after her and is like, take down the review. You're ruining my livelihood. It's very incels brain coded. It turns out that was for a purpose later. So that was a bit, as a woman, that was a bit much to read about. Very neckbeard energy. If you're a dude, you might not have the same expectation. I'm also a woman in the gaming space, so I've dealt with a lot of these dudes. So knowing that personality, this was a little bit stereotypical in that sense of like, it was a bit much. It was like every stereotype about an incel that you can put into a book, we're gonna put into this one. But the twist got me. What can I say? Third to last, we have You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight by Kaylin Balin, I believe. YA thriller about a summer camp that is inhabited by actors who put on the like final night simulation of like a horror movie. So the killer's after you, you're running around like, oh no, will I survive? And you try to survive. My only issues with this book were that it just felt very young. Like it was not for like an 18 side of young adult, it was for a very like 14, 15, maybe even 13 side of things. There was a lot of chronically online slang and, you know, this thing and that thing that have to do with very pop culture things. I'm just too old for it. Like but the story was pretty good. The premise was really cool. I think I was just not the target demographic at 29 years old, you know, which fair. Second to last, I read Just the Nicest Couple by Mary Kubica? I don't know how you say that. Another 4 stars. I liked this one a lot. The dedication to the cause that this husband had. If you don't like domestic thrillers, you will not like this one. But the amount of dedication that he had to his wife, and it was just so narrow-minded, and like they didn't think about the consequences very much. And like something happened that was right in front of his face and he just could not accept it, basically. I figured out something very early on, like, oh, she did this. And he's just like, but she told me this, so that's what happened. It has to be what happened. It's like, okay, delusional, but all right. Then the other side of things, there's this woman named Nina whose husband is missing. And granted, her husband was not great, but now he's missing, potentially dead. And she's kind of trying to deal with that and like figure out, are her friends her friends? Was her husband the man she thought he was? You know, all this. And it was very twisty turny. Didn't know what was gonna happen. A couple times I lost track of what was real versus what was being imagined by these people, so that was pretty fun. 4 stars. First thing I've ever read by Mary Kubica. I think I would read more of hers. The middle got a little bit slow, but the beginning and the end, stellar. Last full book I read in January was Checkmate by Ali Hazelwood, another young adult romance. However, other than the lack of explicit sex scenes, this book was no different than her other adult books. Like, there's even like the foreplay part of the explicit scene. There's just not the explicit scene itself. However, the act of sex itself was talked about in every single chapter. Maybe I just think that teenagers are a little more holistic than they actually are. Maybe they think about sex to this level of extent. I didn't, so it came as a shock to me that this would be for young adults. Definitely for older young adults. Probably should be new adult, in all honesty. And then the very last book that I'll count for January, even though I haven't completely finished it yet, is Good Bad Girl by Alice Feeney. This is my first Alice Feeney book. Not gonna lie, not impressed. I'm this far, you know, about halfway, and maybe a little bit over halfway, maybe like 55, 60%. This is feeling very 3 stars to me right now. I've had to say some stuff out loud because it's just so convoluted and complicated right now and things are not lining up. So I don't know how that works. I've heard that Rock, Paper, Scissors by her is like the best book ever when it comes to thrillers. This is the one my library had. I also have His and Hers on my library TBR as well. I don't know, maybe she's not for me. I don't know. It just seems very surface level right now, but like I said, only 60% through. That is it for the December, January wrap up. Hello everybody. I'm back. It is now March. This video has been ongoing because I just haven't been reading as much. I never feel confident in the fact that like I've been reading enough to even post. And I have now, in this video is going to be December and January and February. I read 8 books in the month of February, combined and filmed both December and January together, and then now I'm here at a much later date. I did want to just go ahead and, since I had all the videos, there's not really a point in posting them twice, December and January, and then February again. We're gonna combine them into like a winter, what we read, a winter wrap up, we'll say. Also, change of scenery. I am gonna be doing a few more videos in my office again because I am able to record much more at a time in this office. I have my microphone, which I'm not using now because I didn't want to have two different types of audio in the same video. I'm gonna be trying to use my microphone again that I use for my gaming content, which let me know if you guys would like to see more of. I'm gonna try to be editing those more in the coming weeks and months because I have basically all of Resident Evil 4 filmed. I just haven't edited it and posted it. I can control the lighting. I can record for more than 5 minutes at a time without my camera overheating because I actually have it connected to my computer through OBS. It goes by the storage that's on my computer and it uses my computer as the brain instead of the camera. The camera's just the eyes, if that makes sense. Hopefully the audio, hopefully the visuals are all right. It feels like when I used to stream, I used to say that all the time. Like I said, we read 8 books in the month of February. I don't have all of them with me. I do have quite a few, but some were either digital or were library books. So the first book that we read was Good Bad Girl by Alice Feeney. This was my first Alice Feeney book. I gave it a 3 stars. I was very confused most of the time. Nothing happened, really. She sets it up very quickly to be like, ooh, this person is someone that's missing. This person lost them and now their lives are ruined and these people suck, and all of it is just like, okay. I didn't feel connected to the characters in any way. I didn't really like any of them, to be honest. What they've created for themselves, I don't care. Like, you made this bed, now you gotta lie in it. And then the ending was like, oh, there really aren't any consequences for our actions. It was bizarre. Let me know down in the comments if there's any other Alice Feeney's that I should read. Maybe I picked the wrong one to start. I am cautious. I had another one picked out from the library and I immediately sent it back because I was like, I don't want to read another one right now. But I know that my library has his and hers. And then there's some on Kindle Unlimited. I think Rock, Paper, Scissors is on Kindle Unlimited. Those are the two that were kind of on my radar for her if I liked this book, and then I didn't, so I didn't read them. However, I am open to hearing in the comments recommendations of others that I should read. Next, we read Old Country by Matt and Harrison Query. This was for the prompt, new author to me. I tried to keep track of that as much as I could. Not what I thought it was going to be. I wanted this to be a certain way, and then it just wasn't. If you like character studies on like a war vet that's going through active PTSD and like their family around them and how to support them and you know what's going on in their mental state and how that can like manifest in the area around you, for you. If you want a really spooky time with a lot of action, this is kind of half for you. I gave this a 3.5 because I wanted more from the actual spook factors and I wanted much less from the character. Harry and Sasha, they move out to, I want to say Idaho, somewhere very remote, homestead level, where they get some news from their neighbors about some situations that happen every season on their farm, homestead thing. And them having to go through those different seasons and like the creep factor and like all these risks that they're taking that they didn't realize they were taking was so good. But I just wish that there was more of it. But it does, though there's not a lot of like death in this book. Like, so if you're sensitive to that, there's only like one scene in here. However, it is probably one of the most rough death scenes I've ever seen in my life, or I've ever read in my life. I don't think I could have watched, I would have hid my eyes if I was watching the movie. So definitely keep that in mind. You can kind of skim through those pages. Wanted more from this, but 3.5 stars, like I said. Next, we have The Bride Test by Helen Huang. I read 2 Helen Huangs this month, and I can say confidently that they are my new favorite author. I read 3 books of theirs. They have 3 books to read, so I'm out completely now. And they're all 5 and 6 stars. I laughed. I cried. I felt so deeply for these characters that I just wanted to protect them with everything that I had. I can't explain it other than that, really. I read The Kiss Quotient last year. So good. One of my best favorite books of 2023. The Bride Test is what I read first. That's the second book in that same interconnected standalone series, all about Asian American characters growing up in their own households in different, like, situations. They all have an autism spectrum representation, whether that be from the male character or the female character's perspective, whether they know it or not. But in the second book, The Bride Test, Kai, which is the cousin of Michael from the first one, he's 26 and his mother decides that he's old enough. He needs to get married. He's never dated. He has no interest in dating. He doesn't want a woman in his space. He has low support needs. Like, he's perfectly fine on his own. He just is not really good with social situations. He doesn't care about them. So his mother decides to go and find him a bride. And she goes and she finds a woman in Vietnam, where the mother's from. And she basically pays her to go to the States, and if she can get Kai to marry her in 3 months, then she gets to stay in the States because she'll have a green card. However, she has a daughter back home. So if she, either doesn't get him to fall in love with her or she decides that she doesn't want to stay, she can always go back home. She'll get paid $20,000 from the mother, and she'll get couple months in America, basically a vacation. Esme sees this as a opportunity to, like, have a life in America. So she wants to make the most of that, and Kai is kind of her way to get there. But then, of course, it's a romance book, so she kind of learns how to be with Kai on the way that he needs her to be, and then also learns about herself and, like, the fact that sometimes life just puts you down, nothing to do with your control, no matter how hard you work, and you just have to kind of shift your focus and do something else. And it was just Kai learning about how to be, a more social man and how to let people into his life, and then Esme trying to figure out, what she wants out of life, what she wants for her daughter's life, what she thinks that she is capable of doing, what she's actually capable of doing when circumstances allow. So good. It rated it 5 stars, of course. It was just amazing, and this is probably my third favorite in the series of the 3, but it's still a 5 stars, so that just shows how good the other 2 are. Next, we read The Fury by Alex Michaelides. This book was interesting. I gave it a 4.5 stars. I have this issue with him, just like I did with Riley Sager, where it's just like, what? So many twists right there at the end. And he tells you the end up front, so you know what's gonna happen, and then it just keeps, like, not happening. And you're like, oh, this is where it's gonna happen, and then it just doesn't. Oh, this is where it's gonna happen, and then it doesn't. So you wanna keep reading, and you wanna figure out how the event happens. And it has an unreliable narrator, but he's the most pretentious but fun. He's straight, but he acts like your pretentious artsy theater gay best friend, like that kind of very stereotypical personality, the stereotype that this is kind of playing into. And it all reads like a play from his perspective, from a very narcissistic, I can do no wrong, everything happened to me type of narration. And it was so interesting and so chronically readable and bingeable. And it doesn't even have 300 pages, like, it respects your time. And it was just so good. And also this cover is gorgeous, and it was in Greece, and all the people suck, but in, like, the most entertaining way. It's like reality television, but a thriller. Ugh. So good. 4.5 stars. The only other Alex Michaelides book that I have left is The Silent Patient. So I'm going to be reading that soon, especially now that it's on Kindle Unlimited. I can read it on my Kindle instead of the physical copy. Next, we read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. Not gonna lie, I was disappointed by this. I keep reading young adult books and keep realizing that I am no longer a young adult. Like, I'm almost 30 years old. I just don't think the young adult is for me. Like, I want the stakes to be higher than this. Like, she's in high school, she's going to college, she decides to investigate a case that was closed in her town of a murder-suicide, and she doesn't think that the guy did it, and she wants to prove it. And so she works with his brother, who also doesn't think he did it, to try to clear his name, and she's working on like a capstone project, and it kind of just spirals from there. There's a lot of crazy shit that happens in this that doesn't have anything to do with anything. And so I don't know if I'm sure that's like setting up the other two books, but I don't have any interest. It just drug for me in the middle. I don't have any interest in reading the other two, so I guess I'll just not know those plot threads. Like, we have so many threads, and then she just drops like 6 of them and holds on to one. And it's just like, why? Why did you give me all those other threads? I don't care. But yeah, I didn't care about the characters. Pip, to me, was very unlikable. Ravi was great. I don't know. I just think maybe young adult thrillers are not for me. I have quite a few that I've bought secondhand that I've liked in the past. Maybe just this series is just not for me. We'll see. But yeah, 3 stars. Next, I read Little Eyes by Samantha Schweblin. This is a translated fiction by Megan McDowell. If you like Black Mirror, you'll like this book. This book is basically how, no matter the technology, humans will destroy it. We will take advantage of it and we'll do some shit that's crazy. Probably illegal. Probably to hurt other people. It's a commentary on if the nanny cam scenario kind of went even further. So you have 2 types of people. You have Kentucky dwellers and owners. The Kentucky are a little robot animal that's kind of like a nanny cam. It has cameras for eyes, but the dweller can move it around. So it can like follow you on these little wheels. It can go down the street with you. It can, hop up on the couch with you if you make it a little ramp or whatever. They can't communicate with you outright, but people, of course, find a way to communicate with their owners as well. It's marketed as a way to like see the world and see other places and, talk to new people and all this. But it's very isolating to those who are drawn to kind of that parasocial relationship. Think of like a streamer and a viewer, right? You can comment to them, you watch them as they're doing everyday things, but you don't really know them and you don't really have a relationship with them, that kind of thing. I gave it 4 stars. It was very thought-provoking. It was very deep. It was very dark at certain points. And it just shows you that people suck. But some people suck on accident and some people suck on purpose. It's one of those books that's a little dark, it's a little miserable, not a happy read, but I think it's very important to comment on the like parasocial relationships that people tend to have in a more digital age. The last 2, we have The Invited by Jennifer McMahon. I am definitely going to be reading books from Jennifer McMahon in the future. This is what I wanted more of the Old Country to be. The Old Country had much more creative ideas, but this was written so much better and executed so much better. This book is about a couple that also moves out to, who knows where. I think this is in Vermont, and buys a piece of land on a bog this time instead of in the mountains. And they decide to build their own house. So the tagline that got me, the chilling ghost story with a twist. They return to the woods of Vermont to tell the story of a husband and wife who don't simply move into a haunted house, they build one. Which is very true. That's the most literal description that you could possibly say. Has a history teacher and a science teacher that decide to quit their jobs, go homesteading, build their own home from scratch. As they're living there, they hear these local ghost stories of the town, and they hear about the witch that died on the property and that she might still be there. The history teacher wife gets obsessed with the story and is pushing her husband away, and then they're having all these issues, but then it's like, oh wait, we need to work past this because we love each other and we want to live together. And it's like, it's just kind of expectations versus what you've actually seen, and do I believe you, and history has this power of coming back. And then there's also another story going on at the same time about Olive, who's 14, and her mother ran off with another guy. That's what the whole book says. That's what her dad believes. That's what the family believes. But is it really what happened? Nobody knows. She just disappeared one day. So did she, or did she not? So while Helen, the history teacher, is trying to unwrap the story of Hattie the witch, then Olive, the 14-year-old girl, is trying to unravel the story of her missing mother. So lots of mystery, lots of intrigue. The stories are not completely disconnected, like they go together, but there's just two different goals in mind per se. But I definitely will be reading more from Jennifer McMahon in the future. Jennifer McMahon? I don't know how you say it. 4 stars. And then last this month, we read The Heart Principle by Helen Huang. So Kai from The Bride Test, his brother Quan is the main character in this one. And then we also have Anna, who is a professional violinist, and she is stuck in this compulsive OCD level rehearsal pattern, basically. She is such a perfectionist to the point where it's literally ruining her career because she doesn't feel like she's worthy or that she's able to play the pieces in the way that they're meant to be played. She's on that journey of like trying to get her career back on track. And then Kai has a company with Michael from the first one, and they are in the midst of potentially being bought out by Louis Vuitton. So each character is on different paths, but they meet because Anna is in a committed relationship with her boyfriend Julian, who decides that he wants to open up the relationship because he doesn't want to settle down without knowing what else is out there. So you instantly hate him. You instantly hate him so hard. And he is so convinced that she is not gonna date anybody else during this time, during this open relationship. He's like, who else are you gonna have, who are you gonna sleep with? You don't even like to sleep with me. And she's like, I wonder why. So she's determined to prove him wrong. So she decides to go on a dating app and find a man, have a one-night stand, prove to herself, prove to him that she can sleep with other people if she wants to. And that person is Quan. Quan, however, is struggling with his own, like, body image issues from a illness that he had, and he talks more about that, but he is on his own journey of self-esteem, just like she is. So they meet up, and she has a panic attack, and they can't actually continue the date. So they decide to do it the next day. And then he has an issue the next day. And so it's just like they keep trying to have this one-night stand and they just keep failing. And it's just the most adorable thing. And they realize that they don't want to have it just be one night, and that all this time and this lead up to it is the best part, not the actual sleeping together part. I mean, they do. It is spicy, but it's just, it was adorable. And this one was my absolute favorite because while she's on this journey to like deal with her, what she thinks is like OCD compulsion journey, you see a glimpse of her with her family, and she has a family member that she has to suddenly become the caretaker of. And she basically breaks down and she's like, why can't I do this? Why can't I be a good person? She finds out that she's on the spectrum, which you knew going into it somebody had to be, because it's Helen Huang. So she's on the journey to like discover herself and to have her family accept her for what she is, and why she can't always live up to their expectations, and why she's stuck in this loop practicing her violin, and why she's not good at, social interactions, and why she changes herself and masks to be what they want her to be around them. So good. I cried so much. I gave this one 6 stars. This one's my favorite in the series for sure. Ugh, it was so good. I'm filming this on March the 4th, and I finished that on the 27th of February, and I still haven't read anything since because I'm stuck in this like that book was so good, nothing could possibly top it. So that sucks. In that regard, I'm gonna end up going to the library. I'm turning back basically all of my library books in and starting over because I need fresh stuff to read. Cannot recommend that whole series of interconnected standalones. I can't recommend them enough. They're more along the lines of like an Emily Henry instead of like a Tessa Bailey. Like, they are not only about the romance. They're more of like a women's lit or like a chick lit type where it's not just these people are hot, they should date. It's these people are becoming better people so then they can be together and then they'll date. And that's really cute. But like, they definitely go through some stuff first. So, more like that than just a light and fluffy romance. Not light and fluffy at all, but not dark like Little Eyes. We're back yet again in another month. So it is now currently April the 1st. I was recently let go from my job because of my health reasons. I'm still not released to work by my neurologist. Driving is a pain. It's still a whole thing. But hopefully that means that I will have more time and be more consistent with actually releasing these videos. I am here with another month of reading. I'm just gonna tack it on to the end and have one big mega video. So thank you guys for watching to this point. So this is what we read in March. Firstly, we have A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I have been eating up this series. This was the second book in the From Blood and Ash series, and I eat these up. If you like reality TV, this is for you. It's not that it's not well written, but it's very like today's language in a fantasy setting. So like at one point, I can't remember if it's in this one or the next one, he says, "You do you." So it's like, it's not a high fantasy in that regard. It's just a fun time. I loved this. I can't really talk about it because there's a pretty major spoiler about a character's identity in this, but I really liked it. I thought it was better than the first one, to be honest. I gave it a 4 stars. Romantasy, just a fun time. Let's see, what did I put in my notes? I put Poppy is so annoying, but I love the political intrigue and action in this story. So, the guy, down bad. Down so bad for her. Something I do like about this series, though, as it goes on, is that it's very fast-paced, and they don't throw unnecessary conflict in, from what I can tell so far. It's just like, oh, they don't need a third act breakup. You know, they can just be together and deal with things together, which as a married woman, I really love to see, because it's like, yeah, you get the guy, but then what after that? You know, it's not always just about them getting together. It's like, we want to see them together and actually being together. So that part I really like. Next, I read on my Kindle The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell. This book was a freaking fever dream. I only gave it 3.5 stars. It was fine. Very historical fiction down to the spelling of specific words and things that they would, you know, do and actions they would take. My notes say weird ass book. Started out slow, but eventually gets better in the last 50%. Horror story about these wooden, like, think of a cardboard cutout, but it's made out of wood, painted so realistically that they look like people. And they start moving around the house on their own, and nobody knows who is actually doing the moving or why. They go to certain rooms. There are more of them that keep popping up. And all throughout this, the main characters are like, am I going crazy? Is this really happening? Is this tied to who the house used to own to? Is it just one of the servants playing a prank? I will say check the trigger warnings about this because there is a unfortunate event that happens in this book, so definitely check your trigger warnings on that one. But yeah, 3.5, it was all right. Next we have The Resting Place by Camilla Sten. Camilla Sten does it again. 4.5. The only reason I took a 0.5 star off is because there's a twist. It's not that it doesn't make sense. It's that there's no way for you to see it coming. And I don't necessarily like that. in the grand scheme. The synopsis of this book: this woman named Eleanor with face spineless meets the murderer of her awful grandmother, like face to face, but she can't recognize them in a crowd because she can't actually see faces the way that like a neurotypical person can. She is then called to the house that she never knew her grandmother had out in the country by the lawyer to basically read the will and like go through her effects and see what you want to keep and that kind of stuff. Some creepy stuff starts happening like minute one of them getting to this house. Flew through this book. I want her to write more like right now. Her writing, it wasn't quite up to The Lost Village, but it was right there. Definitely recommend if you love a thriller. Next, I read A Crown of Gilded Bones. Back to this same From Blood and Ash series. This is the third book. This is the best one so far. They just keep getting better. I rated this a 4.5. Again, I can't really talk about it too much because of it being the third book in the series, but I really liked the main character's growth in this one. She wasn't as annoying as in the last one, and her and the guy she's with are just still so cute, and they're having to like work through like real high fantasy like problems. It's definitely much more about the politics than it is about them as people now, which I am really loving because it's one of those like, oh, I got to know them in the first book, and then I got to know them even more and was introduced into a lot of the political intrigue in the second book, and then now we know the characters. We're good with those. So let's focus on the story, and I love that. The ending, let's see, what did I put? I put that the ending was very fast-paced and really makes me want to keep reading this series. So I am going to be finishing this series. However, there's another series that Jennifer L. Armentrout writes that is about this world, kind of like a prequel series about the First Maiden that's referenced a lot in this series by like the mystery that's been with her. So I'm going with the recommended reading order that is on Jennifer L. Armentrout's website, which is the first 3 books of this, and then you read the first book of the other series, and then you go back to this series, and then you go back to that series, and it's like you kind of keep going back and forth. So that's why the series are going to be interconnected in the future. So I'm currently reading the first book in the next series, so we'll see how that compares to this guy. Next, I read another one on my Kindle called The Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez. Now I can say that I've officially read everything by Abby Jimenez. However, this was her first book, I believe, that she ever wrote, if I remember correctly. And it definitely feels like the first book, you know what I mean? Feels like a debut novel. I read the second book of this, the Happily Ever After playlist, so I knew what was gonna happen to this couple, because they're in that book as well. And like the consequences of their actions are in that book. So unfortunately, a lot of the tension that you're not sure what's going to happen, I already knew the outcome. So that's kind of a line that you run if you read interconnected standalones out of order with which they were written. So that kind of sucks, but I think that's what kind of kept it at the rating that it is. I gave it a 4 stars because I really liked the story. I think if I had read this one first and hadn't read her later works like Part of Your World and Yours Truly, which are just phenomenal, I think this probably would have got a higher rating because I really do love the way that she treats heavier topics like infertility and having a loved one being deployed, like the internal struggles that other characters are having. I think she wrote them so well. So 4 stars. Very spicy. This is a spicy book. Keep that in mind. I did think the main character was a little annoying. She did a lot of assuming of what the male main character Josh was thinking at all times and like why he was doing the things that he was doing instead of just asking him or just communicating. Her whole shtick in this book is that she's super straightforward and she's very direct, and it's like, but you didn't actually ask him anything. You didn't communicate. Everybody is sleeping on Josh Copeland, the king. He is patient, kind, understanding of this girl's crazy moods. Like, the whole time. So good. I stayed in the romance mood after that, and I decided to read Ready or Not by Cara Bastone. Bastone? This cover is gorgeous. This was my book of the month pick for February. Surprise pregnancy, but you know that off the jump. Like, that's on the blurb. Like, that's the point in the book, is that she is pregnant from a one-night stand. This guy is her best friend's brother, who recently got out of a 10-year long relationship or something stupid long. And she's single. So she is trying to figure out if she's going to raise this baby by herself, or who's going to be in its life. Is the dad going to be involved? And he goes on this journey as well of like, oh my God, I'm going to have a kid. Do I want to be involved? Blah, blah, blah. Shep, the brother, is very golden retriever. He's very golden retriever energy, but almost too much. Like, the man does not have a alpha bone in his body. Like, he definitely refers to her for like everything, which is fine. It's not the type of romance that I normally like. I like when the dude kind of has an initiative, but he's very in the background, letting her be the main character, which is great. It just isn't for me. And so this one only got a 3.5. I thought it was fine. Thought it was cute, fluffy. She does go on a little bit of a journey of like figuring out what's important to her and introspection and her relationship with the best friend that's the sister. Pretty good. Glad to have it just for the cover alone, to be honest. It is a little cringy at times. The FMC could be a little annoying with her pity party. Yeah. I wrote on my notes. It's a very slow burn. You get like one spicy scene in this book, and it's over 400 pages long. So keep that in mind. Although the 400 pages, the words are very big. So it's a pretty quick read in the big picture. It's good if you like don't want to think that hard. There's a lot of like millennial and Gen Z slang in this book, however, which is supposed to be like fun and quirky, but it's just not for me. But it's for other people, and that's great. Gorgeous cover. Bottom line. Next, I read The Ghost Eaters by Clay McLeod Chapman. This was a weird book to read. After I was in such a romance kick, I was like, I need something a little darker. This book was a lot. It does a lot of blending of the themes of addiction and grief and how those go together, and it's very deep. If you've ever seen the movie Mother, very similar vibes. It's unsettling. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense all the time. You gotta kind of look up stuff to figure out what you're supposed to be thinking. Erin has a hard time setting boundaries with her former college boyfriend, Silas. She just decides to like, I can't do this anymore. I need to let you go, get you out of my life. He dies of an overdose, and this is all in the blurb. So she goes on this trip of like grieving and basically doing whatever you can to get back what you've lost. And one of their mutual friends says that he has a way that he can contact the dead, and it's a drug called Ghost. But there are some pretty intense side effects, and is it really worth it psychologically to go through all of that? And it goes from kind of slow in the beginning to like batshit crazy at the end. I thought it went a little too crazy. I gave it a 3.5. It's a very meh month, other than, well, certain books were good. Written in a weird style that just wasn't for me. But it was very bingeable. Like, you're just like, what the hell is gonna happen next? So that was pretty good. But it wasn't my favorite. But good if you like a thriller with some horror aspects, for sure. And then lastly, I read Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. I am not a hot girl, smart girl. If you like books that have zero plot and character development, like so much talk of people's feelings and what happened in the past, and if you like those commercials with Matthew McConaughey where he's talking philosophical nonsense in the backseat of a Lincoln or whatever that company is that he works for, truly pretentious writing, this book is for you. However, this book is not for me. I gave this a 2.5. I almost DNF'd it, even though it's only around 200-ish pages. I put in my notes that this book was pretentious, overwritten, and about nothing. That's a little harsh, but it's kind of true. I don't ever mean to shit talk books on this channel. I just want to say that they're not for me, because some people, I know several booktubers that loved this book. I just was not one of them. The twist, the supernatural element in this book is very tame in a sense, vague in a sense of like, yeah, you get a reveal, but it is not satisfying in any way, and there's zero action. So I don't really vibe with those types of books. If you've ever heard the podcast, The Magnus Archives, which I can highly recommend, it sounds like the long, drawn-out version of one of those case files, but with like a ton more feelings and thoughts that I didn't think were needed. Ceaseless watcher, turn your eyes to me. I just wanted more from the book, and I got nothing. Like, girl, it's giving nothing. That is it for this video. I'm not adding any more months to this video. I have to actually edit it and put it out. So, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you guys sticking with me through this big hiatus that I've been on and all these health problems that I've been having. So I appreciate that a lot. Thank you so much for having some grace, for leaving the comments, for giving me book recommendations, and feel free to leave more down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Tick the notification bell so you can know when these super infrequent videos are posted. But like I said, hopefully I'm going to be getting a little bit better about that with some more time. And the garden that I planted is finally getting established, so it doesn't need as much care. But I hope you guys are reading a lot. I love you all. Stay safe out there. Support your local library. And happy reading!